Hey, this is WhyBeAre with BeamNG.drive version 0.4.3.0, which is the update that came out on October 31st. So it is coincidentally the Halloween update, but nothing about it really screams Halloween. It just happened to come out on Halloween. And the first thing you probably noticed is that grid map looks different because the textures on the ground have been changed, as well as some new areas have been added, such as the swamp area right over here, which is a muddy area with some pools of water that you could drown your car in or just get stuck in if you try to use the wrong vehicle, such as a rear-wheel drive only truck. That is a huge dumb risk which I am taking, but so far it seems like it's doing okay. Most of the water isn't too deep where you can get through it with this truck, but there are some puddles around here where you can drown this version of the truck. Now if you have the off-road version of the truck, you're pretty much unstoppable unless you do something really dumb where you dip your whole front right into the water really viciously and totally drown it, something like that, because that is officially taken out my truck. So we can go ahead and reset the truck and take a look at this new area to our right, which is this area where there are a bunch of floating cubes in the air, and there's a mountain that connects to this cube over here. And I'm not exactly sure what you're supposed to do in this area and what it could be used for, but it does exist, so I wanted to show that to you. And I guess if we really wanted to, we could actually do something like this, where we take the truck, go way above it, and drop it on the cubes. See if anything interesting happens from doing that. Well, that wasn't so bad. It was pretty cool. And can it drive? No. So that about covers the changes to grid maps. We can go ahead and move on to the other changes, but I forgot I put my truck up in the air. So every time I respawn it, it's going to do that unless I fix that real quickly. So let's just move the truck out to the open space over here, and then we can take a look at the new and improved vehicle selector. And this is what it looks like. And the props are not currently visible, but if you want to see them, you just got to go over here. And then you click prop, and then you can see all the props. But first, let's talk about the cars, because there's a new car. It is called the Gravel Barstow. At least I assume that's how you pronounce it. I don't know if that's how you technically pronounce the last name. And I know that's not how you technically pronounce the first part of the name, but that's the nickname I've used for, 400 videos? Nickname ain't changing now. And I'll be doing a whole video for this vehicle later on, but first I just wanted to give you guys a quick look at it before that video gets released. And we'll start off with a nicer version of the car. And there it is. We could just kind of pan the outside. And I probably could have chose a better color to really see the details as easily as possible, but I think you can see it good enough in the black color. And we could go ahead and take a look at the interior as well. And if you were to ask me what my favorite interior of all the stock vehicles were, I'd probably say this one because it looks really nice to me. Like, it has that wood grain trim all over the place. It has this crazy looking shifted look, futuristic 50 years ago. It has this giant steering wheel with the wood grain all around the edge, which I really like in this car. It looks really good for this car, and you know, it just looks nice. Like, it's hard to explain what makes it so nice, but when you look at it, it just looks really good to me for this car. And with the interior looked at, let's wreck this thing at probably about almost 100 miles per hour, since we were just touching 100 before we decided to slide. And the wheels are falling off, so that usually means it's not going to be drivable. Nope. But you can see it holds up to a crash just as good as any other stock car. And well, that's about all I'll be doing for this car for now, because I want to take a look at all of the other changes to the other cars. And like I said, I will be making a whole video for this car later on. So moving on to the 200BX, there is now a police version, which we could take a look at. And then all the versions you see have the weight reduced just a bit to make it a little bit more realistic. Now this vehicle looks a little bit dated when you put it next to the other police vehicles, because the police vehicles that were already in the game were updated to look a lot more like what I think of when I think of a police vehicle, where this one has the old style, which just looks old now, because there's that new style that's been implemented, which I'll show you in a second. But first I wanted to prove that the light bar can come detached like that. And now we can go and take a look at a Grand Marshal police package, which has the new police design. And this design looks a lot more like what I think of when I think of a police car. So I wouldn't be surprised if someday the 200BX Police Edition gets updated to look more like this one, because it doesn't match now. This one looks so much better than the old one, and then the 200BX kind of has the looks of the old one. Maybe it won't be though. I don't know for sure. But there's really not much to test on this because it is the same model and stuff. It's just a different texture that looks a lot nicer than the old one. It also had its weight reduced just like the 200BX, but there's not much to really show for that. And now we can move on to the Corvette, which has a bunch of new models, and it's kind of confusing to explain this all, so let's just kind of go through them one by one. The DX is a new model that's even slower than the slowest one that was previously available, because it's using a carbureted engine. Then we have the DXI, which is not the same DXI we had before, because before it was just DXIs and variations of the DXI. This one is different than the old DXi because it has black bumpers, where before the DXi had bumpers that matched the car, like this one, for example. But otherwise, it's pretty much the same as the old DXi. Then we have the LXi, which is the same as the DXi, but it has the painted bumpers, better wheels, but same running gear. Then we have the ZXi, which is the same as the DXi Sport that was previously in the game, but this one has a new sticker on the side, which you really can't read unless you spawn it up, so you can see it says ZXi. And all the cars, or all the Corvettes, I mean, have new taillights, and actually most of the cars do have new labels, like this one you can see 1.5 ZXi. Most cars have new labels on them that are a lot clearer, where before they were kind of blurry. Moving on to the next one, that was the Custom, which, if I remember correctly, the Custom is like a modified version of the ZXi, and it had like the racing suspension, the turbo engine, but no roll cage and that kind of things. Then we have the Race and the Rally, which are pretty much the same, but the roll cage is different because the rear seats are removed, and in place of the rear seats is some supports for the roll cage. So I would assume the J-beam structure for the roll cage may have been reworked, or it may not have been. I actually couldn't really tell looking at J-beam structure side by side. It was a little too messy to tell for sure. But that about covers all of the changes to the Corvette. So now we're going to go ahead and move on to the Pessima. And the Pessima just has a new custom version, which is like the 2.7 LX V6 Sport, but it has a more racing style suspension, and it has a new set of wheels that aren't available on any of the other ones. And they look like aftermarket wheels to me. They wouldn't look like something that would come from the factory. So it's like a modified version of the stock one. And then we have the Moonhawk, and they had a few fixes for it, and I think the only addition was that there's now a 4-barrel carburetor version of the engine, which is on the Sport, so the Sport's a little bit faster than it was previously. But aside from that, there are no new additions to it, just fixes. Then we have the Pigeon, which actually has versions you can choose. Now, the stabilizers have been in the game, as far as I can remember, since the Pigeon was released, but now you can actually choose the Pigeon with the stabilizers equipped instead of having to go in the parts menu to select it. And it's the same way for the 600cc version of it. You can just select it like that, and you don't have to deal with the parts menu. Now, this one also has a limited slip differential in it, which just sounds hilarious to me for this car to have a LSD. But you know what? Hey, if it makes it a little bit better to drive, why not? Although that's not making use of the LSD at all. We're just flipping it over. But the engine is the same one that was present in the game before. It's just easier to select it. So I'm not going to do any driving around with it because I did that before. So we could go ahead and move on to the SBR4, which has some new models available. We have the rear-wheel drive S and the all-wheel drive S. Now, these ones are like the base model, but they have a little bit more powerful of an engine. So it's not turbocharged, it's just tuned to be a little bit more higher horsepower output. And then it has bigger wheels, but pretty much the same suspension as the base model. I'm not going to bother driving that around since it is so similar. So let's go and just move on to the next vehicle, which is the Hirochi Sunburst. And now we have the 2.0 all-wheel drive Sport RS police package, which is taking the police package from the normal one and then putting the police details on the RS version, so you just have a faster police version available to us. And once again, I wouldn't be surprised if a later update changes this police imagery to look a lot more like the one you saw in the Grand Marshal, just so they all have the same style, because this one just, again, it feels outdated when you sit it next to the Grand Marshal. And then we also have the new one, which is the Custom. Now, it says it's based on the Sport RS, but there's one thing that doesn't really make much sense about that. If you have this next to a Sport RS, so again, Sport RS, so we're going to say, what's a Sport RS? It's this one. So if we spawn it here, you notice that these are really different. Like the spoiler, bumper, and exhaust don't look like the ones that are on the RS. It actually looks like the ones that are on the Sport S model of the car, which gives me two possible scenarios here. First, the person actually had a Type RS, and then they modified it to be more like a sleeper, so it looks like the Type S. Or they had a Type S, and they modified it to be faster, because it is faster in a straight line than the Type S, and it has a better suspension than the Type S, but they didn't change the outside. But then it says it was based on the, well, it says the parts are from the Type RS, so it's just kind of confusing exactly what they were going for there. I'm just not quite sure. So let's move on to the Bolide, which has a new fancy graphic decal thing. I think they call it paint design. Oh, no, they call it factory graphic. There we go. Graphic was right. Decal was wrong. But you can put it on like that, and I think it looks pretty good on some colors, but some other colors, like the red one, it doesn't look quite as good because it ends up looking black. And it's just like, it looks okay, but on the white, it looks really good. Like, it looks really good having the decal on the white, and Another thing is pretty much every car, including this one, has different wheels, but I'm not really into like sewing different wheels off, because to me it's kind of just boring. Like, look at these wheels, they're there now, you can put them on this car. It's like, yeah, you can see them, but they're not really interesting for a video. But most cars do have new wheel options available to them, just so you know. Anyways, let's move on to the D series and the Roamer. Starting with the D series, it had its weight reduced just like a lot of other vehicles, and it has a new bumper which matches the color of the rest of the truck, and it also matches the license plate color. And we could remove the license plate on the rear as well if you wanted to do that. It doesn't really affect things much, but it is a nice option to have. And for the Roamer, there's very, very few changes except for the new sheriff skin, which is very similar to the one that you see on the Grand Marshal. It has the same kind of design style that you see on that one, and that's why I'm assuming the other ones will eventually match up, because I so much prefer this one to the other one. It just looks so much more of a sheriff police vehicle to me. Just so much nicer, you know? And that's about all there is for that one. So now we can move on to the T series, and I have one thing in particular I want to talk about with the T series, and that is the plow. Now, there was a mod that did something very similar to this, but now it actually comes with the game. So all you do is you open up the frame tab, then you go to front bumper, and you could choose the Ram plow, which looks like that, and it actually has Halloween colors, kind of. It's orange and black. So there's your Halloween part of the Halloween update. So we could just go ahead and park this car like right here, and we could just ram it and see what happens. So park the car there, and instead of driving it backwards because it'll take forever because the big rig is so slow in reverse, we're just going to teleport it because I'm lazy. So you can put it right here. And we'll charge at the Sunburst. I had to remember what it was. I'm like, what is that? It's a Sunburst. And we'll do a little bit of slow-mo as well, and I may or may not do a whole video for this. It depends if you guys are interested in seeing more of the plow. So if you'd want to see a video for this, feel free to leave a comment. But otherwise, here's at least one impact with the plow. I apologize for that camera angle. It's kind of hard to line this up when you're the truck. But you can see it got under the car very well. Didn't quite clear the car in this one, though. It just pushed it up into the air, and now it's a little stuck, actually. Nope, there we go. Car is off, and we've just now wrecked the plow. And the plow actually does a really good job of protecting the truck in impacts, though, because we were going like 30-something miles per hour, 40-something miles per hour into basically a solid object, and it held up because the plow did whatever it's doing, like to protect the truck. It's interesting like that. Anyways, moving on to the H series, I remember one thing again with this one. Like, there weren't many changes to the H series that I can remember, unfortunately. But the thing I do remember is the paint design. We can get a delivery livery. I like saying that, delivery livery. And there you go, that's what it looks like. It has BeamNG Rapid Transit. Somebody call that phone number and tell me what happens. I think, oh, since it's a 555, probably won't, nothing will happen. Don't waste your time. I think like 555 numbers aren't real numbers or something like that. Anyways, that covers all of the vehicles. So now we can go ahead and take a look at the props. First off, the new props. The wall cinder block is a new prop. And we can spawn it up, and all the two pieces fell off. Reset it. Nope. Reset it. There we go. Now all the parts are on it. So now let's just hit it with a car and show you what it looks like when you hit the cinder block. And maybe I could do a video of just crashing cars in the cinder blocks as well. So many possibilities. You could also drop it on cars. I like dropping blocks on cars before. So a little bit of slow-mo on it. And I love how many blocks there are in this. There's just so many blocks, so it just makes this beautiful explosion of blocks when you go through it, and it's pretty fun. That's what I'm getting at. I like it. But that's that prop. I'm kind of slurring a bit here. So moving on to the next new prop, and I believe there was one more. There's the Tire Tester MK2, but that's not really something we can mess around with. It's more of like a debugging kind of thing, it seems like to me. But we do have the tilt board, which has been modified quite a bit. It has like new everything about it. So it looks totally different. So we could just place a car on it and see what it does. So just, come here, Sunburst. And then it tilts. And it tilts the other way. Let's see if we could actually launch it up into the air at all by dropping something heavy on the other side. So we get a T-Series. And I don't like how the T-Series is still split by the props when they're open. Like the vans and trucks are all on the opposite side of the props, which is strange. I don't know why it does that. And did I line that up right? Yes, perfect. And you'll see that this car launches way into the air, where before with the old version, it barely launched into the air at all. It get maybe 2 feet in the air, when now it gets at least 20 feet in the air. So it's a lot more fun to play around with the flip ramp now, and I might do a video again for that as well. There's a lot of things I might want to do a whole video for, But for the update video, there's no point in spending 20 minutes on a single thing, you know what I mean? But that about covers the changes for the vehicles and props, and as you've seen, there have been some changes to the interface as well. It's a lot easier to just find things here, and you have the show configuration button, which is pretty cool. So it just lists everything you could possibly choose from all in one place, so you don't have to deal with sub-menus, and the sorting seems a little bit better. Just overall, like the placement of the buttons and stuff, it feels easier to use, you know what I mean? And there's been changes to other menus as well, but I'm not going to go too deep into that. But there's a lot of bug fixes, and bug fixes are really hard to show off. Like the traction control and the deforming of pretty much every vehicle has been improved in minor ways, but it's really hard to show off minor changes in crashing because you'd have to duplicate the same crash twice. And even if you do the same crash twice in the same version of the game, it usually looks different. So it's like, I can't really show that off well. And same with bug fixes. It's like, oh, let me spend 5 hours to have that one bug happen and say, look, that doesn't happen anymore. Yeah, that's dumb. So if you want to know all those, you're going to have to read the changelog, unfortunately. And there are some new scenarios, which will be in a separate video as well. And there have been small, minor changes to pretty much all of the maps with like the reflections and just small improvements like that. And I think there were some improvements to the AI pathfinding as well. Also, force feedback improvements, if I remember correctly, but that happens with like every update because force feedback's one of those things where it's really hard to get right, it seems like. But I won't be surprised if it does work really well eventually. I haven't tried it with the latest update yet to see how it compares to the old one. Actually, I haven't tried it with force feedback at all. Someday I gotta really try that out. Anyways, I think that will do it. So until next time, this has been WhyBeAre. I'll see ya.